Arsène Wenger spent 22 years at Arsenal, during which time he won 3 Premier League titles, 7 FA Cups, and revolutionised the English game. Wenger's first few years at Arsenal were defined by signings like Mark Overmars and Thierry Henry, hyper-professionalism, and usurping Alex Ferguson's Manchester United to the Premier League title, whereas his last few years at the club were defined by signings like Shkodran Mustafi and Lucas Perez, losing 10-1 aggregate against Bayern Munich, and the blokes from AFTV hounding him out of the club. Football can be a real rollercoaster at times. In all seriousness, thanks Frank, Wenger is a seminal figure in the history of both Arsenal and the English game, and one of the most iconic managers of all time. His 3 Premier League titles in his first 8 years, which culminated with the Invincibles, was achieved with a lower net spend than Middlesbrough, and in the 10 years following Arsenal's move to the Emirates, the Gunners never failed to qualify for the Champions League, despite having a lower net spend than Sunderland, Stoke and QPR. Wenger's glorious and, by that stage, somewhat turbulent more than 2 decades at Arsenal came to an end in West Yorkshire in May 2018, where the Gunners won Wenger's 1,235th and final game in charge, away at Huddersfield Town. Sunderland's Granit Xhaka, Fulham's Alex Iwobi, and Marseille's Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang all started for Arsenal. Meanwhile, future Fiorentina and Morocco midfielder Abdelhamid Sabiri was included on the bench for Huddersfield. But what about the Arsenal bench? Well, it's funny that you should ask really, because that's what today's video is all about. So without further ado, and with an urgent reminder to subscribe not just to this channel, but also to the Alfie Potts-Harmer YouTube channel, here are the 7 Arsenal substitutes from Arsène Wenger's final game in charge of the club, and where those players are now. 7th, Matt Macey, Colchester United. There was no Petr Cech in the Arsenal squad for Arsène Wenger's final game in charge, which meant that Colombian international David Ospina started the game, and third-choice Arsenal goalkeeper Matt Macey was named among the substitutes. A graduate of Arsenal's own youth ranks, Macey only ever made 2 appearances for the Gunners, both in the 2017-18 season, but that is all that he needed to go down as the tallest player to have ever played for the club. Standing at 201 centimetres, or 6 feet and 7 inches tall, Macey beats Per Mertesacker to that title, with a couple of centimetres still to spare. Signed by Hibernian on a free transfer in 2021, Macey saved a penalty against St Johnstone in the 2021 Scottish Cup final, although Hibs still lost the game 1-0. Now aged 31, Macey joined Colchester United in 2024, following stints at both Luton and Portsmouth, where he has been the number 1 for the League 2 side since his arrival. 6th, Per Mertesacker, Arsenal Academy manager. The first and second tallest Arsenal players of all time feature consecutively, as the first 2 players that Arsène Wenger named on his last ever Arsenal bench, and therefore as the first 2 inclusions in this 7. I mean, what are the odds of that? Apparently, it is about 1 in 350,000. I'm not exactly sure on the maths. Arsenal's 1-0 win away at Huddersfield on the final day of the 2017-18 season was both Arsène Wenger and Per Mertesacker's final games, as the World Cup winning German, who was nicknamed the defence pole by his compatriots, hung up his boots at the age of 34. Capped 104 times by Germany, Mertesacker joined Arsenal for a reported £8 million fee from Werder Bremen in 2011, and he was sometimes mocked for his perceived clumsiness and lack of acceleration. A brilliant centre-back nonetheless, he only made 7 Premier League appearances in his last 2 seasons at Arsenal, after being appointed as club captain, but he made 221 appearances for the club in all competitions in total. That's 10 more than Sol Campbell, and 1 fewer than Gabriel Magalhaes, in case you were wondering, and it makes Mertesacker the tallest player to have played more than 2 games for the Gunners. Following his retirement, Mertesacker immediately became Arsenal's academy manager, having agreed to take up the role and retire 12 months prior. 7 years on, Mertesacker is still Arsenal's academy manager, where he has been credited for the emergence of players like Ethan Nwaneri, Miles Lewis-Skelly, and most recently Max Dowman. 5th, Nacho Monreal, football agent. The only other retiree among Arsene Wenger's last 7 substitutes, Nacho Monreal was a regular fixture for Arsenal back in the 2017-18 season, his last full season at the club, playing at both left-back and centre-back. He started in Arsenal's all-important Europa League semi-final tie against Atletico Madrid midweek, which Arsenal lost, but he was dropped for Said Kolasinac away at Huddersfield and introduced in place of the Bosnian after 68 minutes. Despite the appointment of a Basque comrade in the form of Unai Emery as Arsene Wenger's successor, Monreal barely featured the following season. He made just 3 appearances, taking him up to 251 for the club in total, hamstrung by a series of injuries, before returning to La Liga with Real Sociedad. Capped 22 times by Spain, Monreal made 69 appearances over the next 2 seasons, before missing the entirety of his final season in San Sebastian with a serious knee injury, which eventually forced him to retire. Now aged 39, Monreal has become a football agent since hanging up his boots, working on behalf of the agency Global Asses, who are based in his native Pamplona. I should just clarify that I believe Asses translates as aces in English, so it is basically global aces, nothing to do with arses whatsoever, so you can all stop sniggering at the back. Also, despite the name, the group's clients are focused fairly heavily in the Basque Country, where they're based, with several of them playing for Real Sociedad, Athletic Club, and Monreal's first club Osasuna. 4th, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Lyon. The 20th youngest Arsenal debutant of all time, the 11th youngest of Arsene Wenger's reign at the club, and the 2nd youngest in the UEFA Champions League, Ainsley Maitland-Niles made his first appearance for the Gunners against Galatasaray in the Champions League in 2014 as a 17-year-old. 131 appearances followed, including 28 in Arsene Wenger's final season at the club, which was Maitland-Niles' breakout campaign. He didn't start the final game of the season, but he was introduced in place of Alex Iwobi after 72 minutes. Evidently talented, Maitland-Niles could never quite nail down a starting berth at Arsenal, which some have attributed to his own insistence to play in central midfield, as opposed to at fullback. Maitland-Niles dismissed that idea, stating that he would, quote, play right back every week if I had to, end quote. But it was later reported, and seemingly confirmed by Sam Allardyce, that he and his agent had rejected loan moves elsewhere and staying at Arsenal in favour of joining West Brom on loan because they were the only club who'd promised to play him in midfield. In 2023, Maitland-Niles' contract expired at Arsenal and he joined Lyon, where he has since played 83 games, the vast majority of them at right back. Say what you want about Maitland-Niles, who won all 5 of his England caps in 2020, but there are few players out there who are cooler from 12 yards out. 3rd, Joe Willock, Newcastle United. Just 18 years old at the time, Joe Willock made 11 appearances in Arsene Wenger's final season in North London, as one of the club's most highly regarded academy graduates in years. His true breakout campaign came in 2019-20 under Unai Emery, Freddie Ljungberg, and eventually Mikel Arteta, in which he made a whopping 44 appearances in all competitions as a 20-year-old. That was actually the joint most, tied with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, of any player in the Arsenal squad that season, during a season in which Mikel Arteta won what is so far his only major trophy at the Emirates. Willock joined Newcastle on loan in January 2021, as the likes of Thomas Partey and Dani Ceballos had pushed him down the Arsenal pecking order, where he enjoyed an extraordinary half-season of form. Following 8 goals in only 14 appearances under Steve Bruce, Newcastle signed Willock on a permanent basis for £25 million in the summer of 2021. Over 4 years on, the uncapped Londoner has made 132 appearances at St James's Park, but he has never quite replicated the form, certainly in terms of goal scoring, that he exhibited during his loan spell. Ravaged by a whole series of injuries, particularly a couple of setbacks relating to his Achilles 2 seasons ago, Willock has never fully recovered. Aged 26, there is still time for him to return to his best, but proving his fitness and consistently maintaining it might just be his biggest challenge. 2nd, Danny Welbeck, Brighton. I feel like few players have had more underappreciated or unanticipated career turnarounds than Danny Welbeck, who looked very good in Alex Ferguson's penultimate season at Manchester United, failed to quite develop as hoped, joined Arsenal, then Watford, where he was relegated from the Premier League, before rocking up at Brighton. For a club that is synonymous with outstanding recruitment, a lot of people question Welbeck's arrival, but they ought not to have doubted the Tony Blue machine. Now in his 6th season with the Seagulls, Welbeck has scored 41 goals and made 17 assists in 170 appearances on the South Coast, providing a fantastic foil for the likes of Neil Maupay, João Pedro, and wide forwards like Kaoru Mitoma and Yankuba Minte during that time. Brilliant at pressing from the front and retaining possession, Welbeck scored 11 goals last season, which was his best return in front of goal since he was a 21-year-old playing under Fergie. Now aged 34, Welbeck has already scored 4 goals in only 8 games so far this season, putting him on course for his best ever goal-scoring season, and Erling Haaland and Nick Voltemade are the Premier League's only leading scorers with a better goals-to-minute ratio so far this term. On current form, he arguably shouldn't be too far off earning a first recall to the England squad in over 7 years. The last time that Welbeck played for England was while he was at Arsenal, in Arsene Wenger's final season, in which he scored 10 goals in 43 games. He was the first substitute at Wenger's last game, replacing Aubameyang after 67 minutes. First, Eddie Nketiah, Crystal Palace. The final player named on Arsene Wenger's last ever bench at Arsenal. It's a bit mad just to think that Eddie Nketiah has been playing first-team football for over 7 years. Wenger's last season managing Arsenal was Nketiah's first in the first-team squad, aged 18, though he played 10 games and scored 2 goals. Always on the fringes of establishing himself in the Arsenal team, a bit like Maitland-Niles, without ever nailing down a starting berth, Nketiah made 168 appearances in North London, which is more than Alexis Sanchez, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, and indeed Mikel Arteta. A whopping 98 of those were as a substitute though, and following reduced game time in the 2023-24 season, Arsenal and Nketiah decided to part ways. A move to Nottingham Forest collapsed reportedly due to personal terms, before a deal worth a reported £25 million, rising to £30 million subject to add-ons, was struck with Crystal Palace. Nketiah had a bit of a strange first season in South London, as Jean-Philippe Mateta's fine form restricted his game time, and he only scored 3 Premier League goals, but he struck 4 times in the cup competitions, including 2 goals in the FA Cup, which Palace went on to win. Ultimately, now aged 26, Nketiah is still a man with a point to prove, but his £25 to £30 million sale looks like smart business by Arsenal at this stage. That is it for today's video. A shorter one by recent standards, reminiscent of a series that I used to make on this channel about 7 years ago, around the time that Arsene Wenger left Arsenal as it happens. I'm going to be making a few more shorter, punchier, OG HITC 7 style videos over the coming weeks, but for longer documentary style videos, head on over to the Alfie Potshamer YouTube channel, where there are already 7 videos that critics have described as masterful, and you can probably expect more in a similar vein, if that's your kind of thing. Thank you all as ever for watching, hit the like button if you enjoyed today's video, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and make sure that you are subscribed not just to this channel, but also the Alfie Potshamer YouTube channel, if you want to be absolutely bombarded with world-class football content, like the football YouTube equivalent of Blitzkrieg colliding directly with your brain on a routine basis. That's the elevator pitch. You can also find me on various social media platforms, typically via the username at HITC Sevens. I am about to hit 10,000 followers on Instagram for some reason, so there's that. And last but not least, if you are a real super fan and would like to support me additionally, you can now do so by becoming a channel member, either via the Alfie Potshamer YouTube channel or via buymeacoffee.com/Alfie Potshamer, where I am hoping to democratise the process of making videos soon, and members, like Rihanna, will be able to dictate where they send me, what I do there, and all of that sort of thing. Anyway, check that out, but until next time, please take care out there. I love you all. Cheers.